cyber attacks against the food and ag industry, including our seed sector, are on the rise in the United States. And to combat those evolving threats, I understand that the National Food and Agriculture Information Sharing and Analysis Center and its members, which include many seed sector companies, recently launched a new university partnership with Iowa State University, the University of Nebraska, Purdue University, and Virginia Tech University. So this partnership is supposed to bring together research experts at all these universities, pair them with real-world threats facing the industry, and then hopefully design solutions for those. So from what I've learned, and just for our audience, so they have a little background, is that the collaboration is going to provide industry access and visibility to partner universities' collective body of research, allowing those member companies to engage in research on a range of potential risks that could impact our sector. So it'll also provide the industry with better insights on emerging technology being built by the universities for agriculture and the seed industry, which will further next generation research in partnership and with innovators. So today I'm pleased to have experts from all these universities with me. And I would like to start with some introductions. So could each of you briefly introduce yourself and describe your role? We'll start with Jim.
So Jim Reese, Iowa State University, and an Associate Vice President for Research, and I help coordinate activities on many projects, of one of which is ag cybersecurity space, trying to work more purposefully with industry.
Jonathan?
Sure. Jonathan Braley. I'm the director of the Food and Agriculture ISAC. In this role, I have a team of analysts. We, research threats proactively to try to figure out how we can better defend the food and agriculture sector. Additionally, I help build out these partnership programs. So we're working with these trusted universities. We also have relationships with trade associations as well, with the goal of distributing better information throughout the sector, our analysis and research that we're doing. Other than that, I kind of run the day-to-day operations of the Food and Agriculture ISAC.
How about Josh?
Pleasure to be on here. Thank you for having me. Josh Dietrich with the Purdue Applied Research Institute, Purdue University. I am the director of the Health, Food, and Agricultural Resilience Consortium. It was a project funded in conjunction with the Department of Homeland Security in reaction to the fact that the food and ag sector has been declared one of the critical infrastructures in the U.S. Part of our goal is cybersecurity fits under what we're doing in the food and ag sector, but is one of those areas that's not as highly publicized. I don't think it gets the glam that you get in the financial sector, or even, recently the healthcare sector. But we've seen those issues, and as we talked about earlier, we're just doing some introductions. It's now a big focus of some work being done. So it's an important area. It's one that often gets overlooked. And I think as academics, we often don't get exposed to what are the problems industry is facing. So I'm really looking forward to this opportunity and collaborating with all these other great universities that are a part of this.
Feroz?
Yeah, hi everyone. Feroz Batarse, Virginia Tech. I'm an associate professor with the Department of Biological Systems Engineering. It's a department that sits in two colleges, the College of Engineering and College of Agriculture, which really reflects the challenge at hand. The cyber ag challenge needs both worlds to work together, and that's what we potentially hope that this Ag-ISAC can accomplish. I'm involved with I'm also affiliated with the Commonwealth Cyber Initiative, which is CCI, which is the state of Virginia's official cyber front to facing all forms of cyber attacks, and workforce development and education. And I also run the A3 lab, which is the AI assurance lab at the university, as well as the Aqua lab, which is the AI and cyber biosecurity lab for water and agricultural systems, which I think, like I mentioned prior, is deemed to be the first of its kind in the U.S. for this domain. So happy to be here. I look forward to our collaborations and this great partnership.
And Matt?
Matt Hammonds. I serve as Assistant Vice President and Director of Federal Relations for the University of Nebraska system. And my involvement really is in my role is a connector. So we had a conference in Lincoln last summer with a number of speakers, including one of Jonathan's colleagues, talking about the newly launched Food and Ag-ISAC. And we started discussing the idea of a university partnership program, really where many universities have one-to-one connections with industry, but the opportunities with Food and Ag-ISAC many-to-many is really something we're interested in. We're in the midst of building a USDA facility in Lincoln. It's going to be focused on precision agriculture technologies and tools for producers. And so this is really a key area broadly that we're looking at about how we can build more collaborations.
Thank you all so much just for making the time. I know this is a busy time of year in universities, and so I just really appreciate the time that you've set aside to talk about this. So let's just dive right into some questions about the partnership. And I wanted to start with maybe like on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a threat are cyber attacks to the seed sector, to global agriculture, in your opinion?
Yeah, we're recently, so that's a good point. The challenge, Amy, with cybersecurity overall is that most of the attacks take a long time to be realized. So the recent study, which I think that value is changing maybe on a daily basis, shows that in the biological sector overall, including agriculture, water, biotech, and other life sciences, the average that it takes for a cyber attack to be realized is 21 days. And that is not for it to be detected or mitigated. That's only for it to be for the large farm or the operators to realize that there has been a cyber attack. So it's very difficult to assess the dangers, assess the impacts without readiness at the institutional level. One more thing about really the massive impact, I think, of this ISAC would be that the collaboration between our universities and the companies involved and so on. With cybersecurity, obviously, cyber does not respect geographical boundaries, does not respect jurisdictions, does not respect state boundaries. One of the most important concepts in cyber is the speed of spread. So any incident can spread across our food system, supply chains very quickly, and so it makes it much more difficult to capture and realize. The threat is increasing. We recently published a study showing that in the last 10 years, there has been at least 30 major, with an average of $200 million for every attack, 200 major attacks on U.S. agriculture, including livestock, planting, crops, dairy, all the sectors of agriculture. So it's there's a few numbers that I hope can shed some light on the importance of the issue, but it will only become more substantial and emerging in many different ways.
Wow, that really puts it in perspective just to see that number right there. Is anybody else want to weigh in on that?
I'll jump in briefly. So instead of a 10-point scale, we often think of cyber attacks as not a if, but when it's going to happen to you. So from my perspective, it's something we all need to be prepared for. The other interesting thing about the food and agriculture sector is based on kind of our monitoring of attacks, a lot of it's opportunistic in the sense that, organizations across all verticals of the food and agriculture sector are getting hit. They're usually going after low-hanging fruit or organizations with security lapses. So it's really a challenge for companies of all sizes, and that's what makes it so difficult sometimes.
So how do you see that this university partnership program will influence research and development in the seed sector? And we deal with a lot of like high security issues with genetic modification, crop resilience, just a lot of sensitive information. How will the partnership program help with that to protect it, I guess?
I think the hope is that university researchers can come alongside industry and share some of the challenges. I think oftentimes researchers are keyed in on the challenges, but they're not necessarily something that is directly applicable back to industry in real time. So this really helps, I think, to tighten up the communication so that what the researchers are focusing on has real life relevance for industry. And at the same time, as industry is sharing amongst themselves within the ISAC, identifying some of those emerging challenges, which could be key research issues going through. I know for us, we have something called the On-Farm Research Network, which is a network of producers we've had for 40 years across the state that try different growing strategies, that try different approaches in collaboration with university researchers. So there's a very close alignment of our producers with the University of Nebraska, as this is the case with most land-grant universities like those on today's call. And so it really, I think, is a powerful alignment of industry, academia, and producers, and an element of trust there where we can share problems. I'm sure you're familiar with it from a seed perspective, but one of the sessions we had last summer at the conference was on purple maize. And that's almost a decade ago. But I think for many producers, security is not something they like to get up and think about in the morning. That's if it's not an afterthought, it's certainly not probably in the top 10. Unfortunately, given the adoption of technologies, we're going to have to think about more of that and integrating it at the front end more. And so this can help develop some of those technologies.
So will some of the solutions that you come up with really help industry protect intellectual property, not even in industry, but also academically? There's a lot of intellectual property that is very sensitive.
Yeah, I mean, anything which we are developing here for ag cybersecurity is going to impact the other industries as well. Cybersecurity is something in which, I mean, fundamentally, it could be against the manufacturers of equipment, against the seed industry, against the livestock industry. All the same techniques are being used by the bad actors. So the things in which we can learn in one aspect of agriculture can readily be applied. And going back to what Matt had in terms of building that linkage between industry and the universities allows us to pull in both directions. We need to know at the university what are the problems that they're seeing. And this is an area that evolves much faster than many of the other problems in which it is that we work with. Climatic issues have been occurring for a long period of time, will be a long period, versus cybersecurity, as Ferris had pointed out, could occur within a 21-day period in terms of doing that. So you're on very different scales. So being able to pull directionality is a very important piece to all of this.
Now, when did this group start meeting together?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So we've been working informally with these universities for quite a while, but it's just been recently that we've actually formed out this partnership. So we're really excited about it. We aren't sharing a whole bunch yet, but we are starting to distribute some of our threat intelligence. We do weekly reports for these organizations and universities. And as we start producing more things, we want to get them involved. The hope is to start having them join our calls too. And when we're starting to see things, we'll start to share that. But really, it's up to us to kind of brainstorm, work together to figure out the best way that we can, collaborate, bring industry and these research institutes together to tackle some of these threats.
Sorry, Amy, I was just going to insert, you asked about intellectual property. And obviously there's agreements as far as sharing, but I really view this as we look at Department of Defense research, where the fundamental research, the problem, the challenge is not classified. It's only classified when you get to the application. And so in a lot of ways like this, for agricultural research, we can share and come up with solutions together. Obviously, when they pass a certain point with intellectual property where they're in application, that becomes something that's sensitive and more protected. But there's just a lot of opportunities, I think, within the US to share creatively around these challenges. If we look at China, for instance, and the challenges we have with them, government is in industry, it's in academia, it's integrated, and we have to be more creative in the US to really communicate well so that we can address the challenges.
And I think looking at a threat perspective, you mentioned earlier what the seed industry is facing with. Obviously, ransomware can be a big problem, anything that's impacting operations, especially during some of those sensitive planting and growing seasons. A lot of the genetic work too, there's concerns about the theft of intellectual property. It can take many years from a discovery in a lab to become a product on a shelf. And we know that these threat actors are looking to target that data. So we're doing a couple things. We're monitoring ransomware trends to kind of help our members, who are the main actors, what are they doing, what are the tactics, try to keep them up to date with what we're seeing. And then we also have adversary playbooks where we are watching these adversaries that are known to attack the sector and trying to figure out what they're doing. And as we kind of build these out now, this partnership with these universities, we'll be able to start distributing that intelligence, even asking for assistance. But I think kind of getting our information out there to them, they can also help kind of send that downstream, because obviously not everyone is going to be able to join the ISAC. So we want to make sure that we're still participating to the sector as a whole.
Now, Jonathan, you mentioned that you're sending out reports on a fairly regular basis to people in the collaboration, in the partnership. What kind of things are in those reports?
Yeah, great question. We are tracking quite a few things. Critical vulnerabilities, and this goes across traditional IT systems, but also industrial control systems. So operational technology, a big focus for many of our food and agriculture companies. So we are spending a little bit more time paying attention to those than we would traditional IT companies. We also are reporting on ransomware attacks. So we have a monthly ransomware report that goes out. We recently released the first that I know of, 2023 ransomware report that's specifically focused on the food and agriculture sector. And other than that, it's really building collaborative opportunities for our members to get together. So we have weekly calls. We have various avenues for them to share information, ask questions. And then this is kind of the next step, is building out the collaboration opportunities so that we are also including, government, academia, and some of these trade associations as well.
I'm kind of skipping around on my question list a little bit, but when you were talking about who that report goes to and who can benefit from it, it's just making me wonder, at what point will smaller seed companies, smaller ag companies, and even individual growers, how will they be able to benefit from your partnership?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have the information that gets shared within the ISAC. Some of that pertains directly to members. So we can't share everything. That doesn't mean we can't take the stuff that's shared with us, anonymize it, put it into a meaningful report that we can distribute with the trade associations, distribute publicly, distribute with the university partners so that they can send those downstream, so that we're covering larger ground. So we've done a couple things already. We have that public ransomware report, which focuses on the actors known to target the food and agriculture sector. And then also we understand that not all companies have the ability to monitor these threat actors. Not all of them are going to have the resources to potentially join the ISAC. And some of them don't even have a dedicated cyber team to understand these threats. So we actually built out a cybersecurity guide for small and medium-sized businesses, kind of captures some of the lessons learned from our members, but also provides advice for some of these companies to improve their defenses. So we're always working to assist our members, but we also are really focused on the sector as a whole and how we can support them and make them aware of the threats that we're seeing.
And also to what James said about the nature of attacks and what everyone else mentioned. So the uniqueness of agriculture is that, in terms of cyber, is the biological component. So in literature, most of the time, cybersecurity in agriculture could be referred to as cyber biosecurity, because with IT, for instance, systems, networks, we're talking about networks and data and so on. With agriculture, there's a direct impact on the seeds, crops, in many cases, genotypes, phenotypes, genetics, right? All kinds of different aspects that are now very interconnected with the cyber component. So there's really a cyber, biological, and a physical aspect that those three parts overlap with each other, and a threat to one is a threat to the other two. And so it's important to, what makes this Ag-ISAC, unique in terms of other ISACs is that component. Not all other ISACs have a similar angle, if that makes sense. And then the other thing, when it comes to the size, right? So we can see that small farms or medium-sized farms, besides not having a cyber team or not having IT capabilities, they don't think of themselves as potential targets of cyber attacks, given their size. but they're, in a way they're lower hanging fruit, and in a way they have been more targeted by state and non-state adversaries, whether it's their data, whether it's their IP, whether it's their infrastructure, and those different forms of attacks, as James mentioned, not all cyber attacks are created equal. There are different forms: ransomware, denial of service, data poisoning attacks, different forms of attacks that require a different reaction. So in the report that Jonathan is pointing to, Jonathan mentioned ransomware and so on. We aim to maybe have a more descriptive categorization and classifications of those attacks. There's many frameworks that, like the attack framework, NIST has a framework for classifications of different attacks, that depending on the attack you're experiencing, how the farm or the ag operator or the supply chain operator reacts to attack is different. So that is very important to also capture and share across the network.
So there might not necessarily be a list of best practices if you are the recipient of a ransomware attack. Or will there be general guidelines that you could give people based on your research and your collaboration?
Yeah, so real quick, I'll answer that real quick, just following up on my comment. So the 70% or 75% of attacks could be mitigated using cyber resilience hygiene best practices. But with agriculture, like I mentioned, the biological component makes things much more complicated. So you have the last 25% where now attacks are getting more sophisticated, especially as they're being sponsored by different countries, where you need tools like artificial intelligence, you need tools like to be able to train on pattern identifications and outlier detections to be able to minimize those occurrences. So yes, the form of attack is very important to how to dealing with it.
Yeah, I want to just jump in right here. So I got Jim and Iowa State had a really good conference, I guess about 3 months ago, Jim, on cybersecurity. And one thing that was really mentioned, if you think about farms and small businesses, not even that they don't have the monetary capacity to do it, that the capacity to do an additional activity is not there. So managing that, part of a land grant's job is how do we figure out how to incorporate this into extension activities to help with this or come up with novel solutions. And I can't remember, Jim, and you might remember. So when we think about the number of different connections a farm has to various businesses, from the John Deeres of the world to the Syngentas of the world, to if it's a milk processor, all the different places their data goes to. And when you ask a farmer, the only real data they're worried about protecting is the local farm bank and trust account. So they don't realize that if they get into that system, where all that can go. So that's a big concern. And how do we do that as an extension based cooperative group is very important. And then one other point, and then I'll be quiet because there's a lot of smart people on this call right now. The other issue is when you think about cybersecurity, and it was mentioned the biological aspect, you can almost think of some cyber threats as being a second wave. For example, if bird flu takes off tremendously and wipes out poultry, well, the next avenue that you would think about somebody that if they wanted to cripple the food structure would be, how do we wipe out cold storage, which has all of our frozen chicken in it, right? Controlled by very few companies manage those cold storage facilities. So you can think of this ripple effect that cybersecurity can have in our system, right? It's a wave that the system can typically withstand one, but when you pack on a biological with the cyber, then we start to get issues that we may not be able to recover from. Or if we do, it's going to have very strong economic impacts to farmers, to seed companies that supply because they're not going to buy because they don't have money from the crop they lost. So it can be a very compounding problem that we probably haven't focused on in ag as much as we should have.
Sorry about that. I was just going to tell you we're probably going to have to wrap up here in just a few minutes, but as we're thinking about all of this, we could talk about it probably for hours. But as a group going forward, what is the main thing that you hope comes out of this partnership?
From a personal standpoint, in terms of doing it, it's a positive impact on the food supply of our nation. What can we do as our role in this overall system in order to ensure that people of the United States have a safe food supply for years to come?
I think for us, it's focused on the producers, our constituents as land grant universities, really, and how we can be creative in communication and addressing some of these issues in a strategic way that, frankly, we haven't done before. And especially with the higher adoption of technologies in the decades to come, we need to get on top of that. So I'm excited about the synergies that'll come out of the partnerships.
Yeah.
Will you bring other universities or other companies into your membership in the coming months and years?
Absolutely. So we chose to launch this partnership with this initial set of partners. One, we've worked with them before, but also the quality of the work that they do, and because they share, our common commitment to the partnership and to the sector as a whole. So we're honored to work with these universities. We know that there's a lot of universities out there. This was just kind of the initial batch, and we're hoping to we will expand this partner program as we start to identify who the other universities are and see who's interested in working with us.
So if people want more information, who should they contact, Jonathan?
Probably myself. Reach out to the Food and Agriculture ISAC, and then by extension, I can reach out to these universities. But it's been great so far. I know we're really excited about it. I feel like we're making a positive impact on the sector. We're starting to release this reporting, and I think pulling in academia, getting more involved with government is going to be very beneficial to everybody.
Any closing comments that any of you would like to add?
I'll add a quick comment. So food security is obviously national security. And the danger with ag is that it is connected to public health. It's connected to water security. Irrigation is an example. And it's connected to even things like animal health, farmers' well-being, farmer economics, and overall American leadership in this domain. Agriculture in all of its different sectors is under a big threat, and we hope to be a part of helping in making that putting that in a better place.
I want to add a quick comment and maybe some of your viewers here aren't familiar with it. I know when we had our conference and a lot of the academics weren't familiar with it, but if you'll take a moment and Google NSM 16, which is the National Security Memorandum 16, it talks about the importance of food and ag as a critical infrastructure for national security. Cybersecurity is specifically mentioned in that. So it's gaining traction on a national level outside of just the land grant universities who realize its importance. So, I'd encourage the individuals listening to this video to take a peek at that and understand it more so they can realize we're committed to helping find solutions for all three of our pillars, whether it's educating students who can go serve in these roles, working with our small producer groups and farms, and then interacting with industry to come up with the research that helps solve these problems. And, the other universities on this call are outstanding universities, just as Purdue is, and great leaders in these fields.
It's great to see such wonderful collaboration all across the country, really. And I really appreciate all of you joining me today. And hopefully together we can get the word out and make ag and the seed sector a safer place.
Thank you for having us.